Welcome to the Modern Mystic podcast, where we help you make your spirituality and actuality and find more meaning, mindfulness, and magic in your day-to-day life. My name is Kilkenny, your host, who is an elite coach, yoga and meditation professor, priestess, psychic medium, and astrologer, and have been training and spiritually mentoring people for over 20 years, thousands of them. And today I am so ecstatic because, listeners, do you ever feel like you want stronger and clearer guidance and answers from the universe? Or maybe you feel like you're connected to your intuition and a bit psychic, but you want to make that connection even more formidable so you can make optimal decisions all of the time and serve yourself and others in the fullest way. My brilliant guest today, MaryAnn DiMarco, is going to help us with all of the above. MaryAnn is an internationally recognized psychic medium, healer, spiritual teacher, and author who provides guidance, counseling, and mentorship to celebrities and students around the globe. She is author of the fantastic book, Medium Mentor, 10 Powerful Techniques to Awaken Divine Guidance for Yourself, and has been a featured guest across various media platforms, including the New York Times, Good Day New York, Women's Health, Elle, and many, many other news outlets. So MaryAnn, I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast today because you are such a master psychic. You're a potent author and speaker, and welcome to the Modern Mystic podcast.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you so much, Kilkenny. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well,
I appreciate that introduction.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Our audience is going to eat you up. And I'm wondering, and they are wondering, I'm sure, the answer to the only question I ask all my guests, which is, what does it mean to you to be a modern mystic?
Oh, what does it mean? I guess for me, what it means is honestly being not only in tune with others and their energy, but truly being in tune probably with the most authentic part of myself. I really feel like that's what that means, that in this moment, in my modern moment, that I really know more about myself now than I ever have my whole life. I think that's probably the most authentic parts of self, and I couldn't have gotten there without this work.
I love that answer so much. It's so profound. I was talking to my youngest child the other day, and he and I were talking about all the things, mystical, yogic, astrology, some different things. And one of the things we were talking about, he's just of an age, he's on the precipice of teenagehood. And he, when I was sharing some things, he was like, right. And really understanding that these things have to do with self-knowing and authenticity, and
the good confirmation.
He used that word, it really helps you be your authentic self and know yourself. And of course, he's of that psychological age and where he's developing his sense of healthy ego and all the things, Western psychologically. And, so much is a part of being that authentic self. So I think often, we can think of, psychic, mediumship, and all these things are so out there. So I love how you really grounded it. And I love that about your work. You're so grounded. You're so, in the best sense, like every day, no nonsense, no bullshit, no, you don't sound so woo-woo and out there, even though the things you talk about are very much that way.
That is true. Yes.
It's so good. I love your
Thanks.
Really, really
Thanks.
Good.
It has to be practical, Kilkenny. I need it to be, for lack of a better word, it's just normal for me.
Yeah.
So I think hopefully that's what's reflected back.
Yeah. Well, part of your work, in my understanding at least, is you really help people develop their intuitions and psychic gifts in such a simple, clear way, and with the intention to help people in a kind of moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis. So could you talk about that? And let's launch our conversation from this idea of, not only how we can do this in our everyday life, but even the notion that everyone can do this in their everyday life, right? Because our intuitions and our psychic abilities, do you view them as something that are just for a select few? I'm talking about a lot on the podcast. Or do you really see it as something everyone has that potential to do, to
I
access and to find every day?
I absolutely feel that everyone has the ability to make connection, that we are born with this innate ability, that we've been taught to forget it. And if we have simple techniques that speak to our inner knowing that we can all identify with, we can reawaken those abilities and utilize them in our lives in the most powerful and profound ways if we just trust and say yes to that. The way that I teach it is honestly the way my guides have shown it to me. And, we were talking before we started. Yes, my mom, raised me understanding psychics, teaching me about ascended masters and all the things at a very young age. I wasn't really, wanting to know that. I kind of resisted because I thought, well, that's just weird. You're making me weird. I kept thinking, I wanted to just be normal like all the other kids. As I got older and I recognized psychic abilities for what they are, and that a lot of this is our intuitive selves just coming to the forefront, calming the earthly mind and working with us to co-create. These words have developed over time as I've done this practice, but the same message has been consistent, and that is, we can all do this. Wake them up. We can all do this. Wake them up. And so my guides have led me to do this teaching, and it has to be practical because that's how I am. I don't want it complicated. I want it in my
Mm-hmm.
face. Here's how you do it. You don't need to be a psychic medium to figure it out. Go. Do what your soul knows how to do.
That's so great. And it is so much about waking up. I'm from the yoga tradition, and those listeners listening, a lot of them are Buddhists or really, huge Rumi fans. And there's that thread through his poetry, the thread through many of the different, particularly Eastern traditions of waking up. You hear that a lot. Wake up, wake up. That don't go
Yes.
back to sleep, Rumi says that wake
Mm-hmm.
up, wake up.
I love
And
that.
it is so much. I got the chills when you said that, right? About waking up. Because, like you said, we're so indoctrinated with the idea that these aspects of ourself aren't really real. Yet, when you hang out with kids, most kids, no matter what their upbringing is, have a sense. Do you find that, or have you
Yeah, they're
experienced
still
that? Like,
connected.
right? They're so
Yes,
connected.
they're still highly connected. Children are very revealing. And if you pay attention to how they play, they're divinely connected. They understand. They use their imagination to connect with spirit and create storylines in their lives. There's so many things that children do. And then somewhere along the line, puberty, people, life teachings, religion, if it's within your wheelhouse, and it kind of turns us off, or it creates a different way of looking at things, and we tend to forget this magical side to ourselves that we all have, that's just not crazy. I always like to tell people, like, it's not crazy. It's
I
actually
love it.
really the most normal parts of ourselves.
Totally right, because you
Yeah.
don't look at a kid and say like, "Oh, your impetus to play is crazy," or your impetus to love is crazy,
Right,
right? I think
right.
of that,
Oh,
the
yeah,
psychic
yeah, yeah. I love
abilities
that.
like
Hmm.
love almost, right? Like
Yes,
everyone is born and they know how to love. It's not like a chosen few.
that's right.
That wiring is there, but then, our 5 bars to it start to get diminished with our
Yeah,
programming, right?
we're losing connection. We're losing connection ever so slowly. I love that. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And it's true. It's true that they're, out of the mouths of babes, you can really hear their connection to a
Yeah.
higher source for sure.
So when we're going through darker, more challenging times, because I think often people turn understandably towards their spirituality or towards, finding answers, and it can be also that great word crisis, right? That helps wake us up, so to speak,
Yes.
the verb used. So when we're having darker nights of the soul times, or even moderately challenging times, can you please offer our listeners, like, I don't know, 3 to 5 examples of ways that they could connect to their spirit team, connect it to their higher power, so to speak?
Sure. Yes. Great question. First, and whatever you're experiencing in life, the highs or the lows, trust that you can make this connection there, that you, even though you might be doubting and fear might creep up and the ego might get in there, we all deal with it. We have to trust that we have the spiritual team on the other side and that they are here to help guide us and to activate our higher knowing, what your soul already knows. And then you move into your own belief system. What does it look like for you? Your belief system may look very differently than mine. It doesn't matter. Gather information that feels authentic to you in your spiritual space, your physical space, emotional space, whatever that is, and allow that to formulate a belief system that you can connect with and utilize that trust with that belief system together. And then I encourage people, when you're going through a really hard time, try to move I know it's difficult, try to find gratitude. Gratitude will help start to change that frequency and the perception of how you may be viewing things. It allows you to move into a different type of space. And if we just change the lens ever so slightly, you'll start to hear that clarity better. You'll start to hear their words, spirit's words, with clarity better. It'll just ever so slightly shift. And I always tell people that might be very difficult to do. So even if it's just a small little ripple, just something ever so tiny that you can hold on to, it cues the universe and it allows you to put a different vibration out there. That to me is 3 solid techniques. And then you can find what modalities are working for you. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's a beautiful yoga practice and you're moving your body, or maybe you need to take a walk, pull an oracle card, rely on some of these tools that can help support the messaging in that moment. Because when we're low, it's really hard to hear them. And it's hard to have that type of hope. So use the tools, allow some tools to help support you, whatever they are for you. Yeah. Thanks.
Really, really good. Yeah.
That's what I do.
Love what me too. Yeah. I love how you started with trust. And I know in your book you speak about this, and I think it's really beautiful and helpful to extrapolate upon a bit. You talk about step 1, so to speak. You have a 10-fold ladder rung approach, which is fantastic. And again, makes it really accessible. But step 1, you talk about ego. And so to me, that goes hand in hand with what you just offered in your first step of trust, right? Because when we're trusting, we're putting our ego, not in the driver's seat. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Like how you see the ego, how to work with the ego so that then we can trust, etc. in this process of tapping into our higher knowledge powers.
I'm laughing because I used to look at the ego as such the enemy. And I learned to embrace the ego. I learned that ego, along with doubt, along with fear, along with all of these lower vibrations, for lack of a better term, are really there to help us. And all they're doing is trying to protect inner parts of ourselves that are needing that protection or thinking it needs that protection. So I get really curious with my ego, and I'm pretty straightforward with it at this point. You know me, I'm not very wooey about it. And so I want to know why it's showing up. And I sit there with my guides. Why is this showing up? Show me where this started. Who gave this to me in the first place? What situation is activating that I experience is activating this ego in this moment? And so I tend to like to do some investigative work on self. So then it's a great thing, because not only do I get to know parts of myself that need to be either healed or that I have to remember that I learned from and that I can use those learning lessons in the now, but I also clear that space up. This way, when it shows up again, I answer it quicker and more intuitively, because it will show up again. We're not trying to eradicate these feelings. That's way too much work. We're just trying to understand them in a more productive way, so that when they all do show up, the fear, the doubt, the ego, they're like a little gang. You want to remember, I know how to deal with this. I know I have tools that I'm able to work with. And then you're just enlightening yourself, and you're hearing your higher knowing even stronger.
Such a powerful answer. And I'm on a roomy kick, because it's like that poem, The Guest House. Listeners might know this, or you can Google it, but it talks about the guest house and how each feeling is a guest that comes to teach and reveal something to us. And our emotions, right, aren't something to, as you're saying, to bypass, because that's what happens, in the shadow and the underbelly of our spiritual self-help wellness circles, right? But no, we know we got to do that shadow work. And how, like you said,
get to work.
Yes, come back, and then you know how to work with them. I'm curious though, for you, when you say, okay, I do this work, for you, what does that look like, please, even more? Like, do you sit down And because I love how you like roll up your sleeves and you're like, okay, I'm gonna get in touch with my
I
ego, and
have to,
it's so
Kenny, I'm telling you, everybody, I have to be myself, right?
yes.
So I ask spirit, what do you
Like,
want
are
me to
your
do?
eyes closed and are you in a dark room? Like
No,
give us the
no,
whole
just
like
the
blood,
way
why blow.
just the way I'm talking to you right now. This is
Okay.
annoying. I'm tired of my own story. What the heck is going on here? Show me.
Mm-hmm.
Show me. Now, in all fairness, I might hear, write about it. Or I might hear, well, you were 12 and so did this or that. Or I might hear, you need to sit in a meditation. So I wait for them to give me the spiritual prescription and the modality that I
Mm.
need. I'm sort of like, what do you guys want me to do? Because I'm right to the point about it. But I'm trusting that they know my vibration in the moment, that they can match it with whatever spiritual support I need to get to that answer. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's pretty quick, but I will find that answer because I know it lies within me, and then I do the work surrounding it. By the way, surrounding it. And the work is it forgiveness? Is it surrendering? Is it I don't know, love? Should I answer, does my inner child need some love? There is an extra step to all of that to help find the resolve, so that when it shows up again, you know what to do.
Yes, so significant. I know with my psychic mediumship, when I work with clients, my one of my goals is giving them so much material that they almost don't need me ever again. Like it's like and taking and co-participating in the process and taking so much responsibility. Because part of this work you can think of, oh, like people go to psychic mediums and some people are psychic medium hoppers, I feel like, and that's cool. Like I mean, I love the metaphysical realm, and with this podcast I'm a hopper in my own way. However, I love what you spoke of, because I feel like the true spiritual psychological maturation is taking responsibility and learning to have relationship with spirit. So the psychic mediumship work and everything you talk about in your book helps you do that, helps you step up to the plate of your own psychic empowerment so that you can do continuing deep work with spirit and lesson work and shadow work and all the work. So I love how you spoke of that. You just say like, hey, you just ask, like people listening, you literally just ask, and then you have to actually pay attention to what the universe gives you, and then actually maybe do it. And maybe, that's the other thing, right? Like you actually have to, you get the message and then it's like, oh, I have to journal, or I have to do X, Y, and Z, right? And then you have to follow up if you want this relationship to continue, no?
Oh, the word you're talking about is accountability.
Yes.
We are accountable for our relationship, not only with self but with spirit. We're accountable for our actions. Our free will is in there, and spirit can only put out the breadcrumbs for us and say, hey, here's what we can show you, but you have to do that work. And I highly encourage everyone to do that work, because the work is why we are here. The work is what we're supposed to be figuring out as a human soul, spiritual soul, but our human self is supposed to be figuring this out. We're on this big flying rock and, in the universe, and we're in this school for a reason. Part of that is understanding the deeper parts of self and coming to spaces of love and peace. Yes. And that requires some work. And to your point, yes, people who go to psychics all the time, and I love the term psychic hopper, I think we have to understand there's a couple of things about that. When I first started doing readings, I felt very called to tell people. They would say to me, oh, can I come back in a month? And I would say, no, I'll see you in a year. And because I felt like you, like, go do what they told you to do and then come back to me. The part of people relying on us to give them answers is, for me, not a good route to go down. You really want to be able to provide a takeaway. And I love that you said that. Such yay. Yes. You couldn't see me clapping, but I was clapping. You want them to have a takeaway. You want them to be, wow, all right, I'm walking away with this reading. Not only maybe I felt connected to my loved ones or it was psychic, but you want them to go and do that work. And so I think that going forward, and it's been going on for a few years, I think you're seeing more and more readings like that. And that thrills me. Love that. I
Yeah.
think it's the
Yeah.
most helpful thing you can give your sitter.
Really beautiful. Yes. And you spoke of, trust, which is when we fully trust, right? Our ego is not running the show. we might have that fear, we might rub against different, challenging feelings within ourselves. But ultimately, when we get to that space of trust, we are totally letting go, and so that's one thing I just want to highlight, because it was really powerful what you said, because I think we really have to start from that place if we want to receive messages of just, okay, let me just really open up to what is and what I'm receiving. And then you also talked about, which I love, gratitude, because gratitude raises our vibration, and you talked about raising vibration. And so much of my experience, and I'm wondering if you could speak to, please, your expertise and experience, is about learning to raise my vibration, raise my consciousness, which for me happened as a byproduct of meditating all the time. Like for me, just meditating since I was 5, I've just slowly built an acumen, so to speak, of different spiritual, I guess they call it cities in yoga,
Yes.
psychic gifts, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
my intention wasn't to develop my psychic gifts. My intention was just to meditate, to learn lessons, and become as involved as I could. And those were a byproduct. And my experience is when I practice gratitude, it helps me let go of my ego, because when you're in gratitude, right, you can't, your ego isn't dominating. You're in the highest self, which is separate from your ego.
That
And I
is right.
love how you talked about gratitude as a way to elevate your vibration. So can you talk about what that means to you, and how when you're at a higher vibration, you're in a radio station, then you can hear spirit, your spirit team, angels and guides?
Yes, I'm happy to talk about that. Different frequencies, different vibrations, and how we tap in, our energy and our mood and our thought process comes into play. Absolutely. What we're experiencing in life, all of that comes into play. What I often tell people, and what I try to do myself, is that if I feel like I'm at that lower vibration, and I absolutely can go there, I'm a human being just like everybody else, I don't feel comfortable there. And so I definitely want to find a way to raise it back. And so I will rely on meditation and gratitude, any type of tool, like I said before, to help me get to this beautiful mid-level here where we reside. What I find, and maybe you feel the same way, is that the misconception is that we should reside up here, constantly raising, higher, higher. That is exhausting. This is a place to visit, not to remain. As psychic mediums, yes, we're going to raise up to this level during a reading. We're going to raise up to this level, and anybody else, if you're not a psychic medium, through your meditative practice, if you like to take astral flight, if you like to want to hear good downloads, if you want to really connect with your own loved one, let's get up here for a while. But let's always remember that we have to come back and ground in our earthly plane, because we're still supposed to be here. This gets exhausting. And I find that when people are using practices to continue to raise and raise and raise, they get defeated because it's so tiring, and they can't quite maintain that. So things like gratitude it's tangible. It's something we can all do, hopefully. I pray that we all can, that hopefully we can all get to that type of space. And that's why I like things like meditation as well, because there's a grounding practice that takes place in meditation, along with that expansion of self. And I love that. I like things that raise and can bring us back to center, take us up and bring us here. And that's always how I do vibration, because I don't know about you, but when I first started reading, I had like such spiritual adrenaline. I just wanted to keep like writing, reading, and I was like feverish because it was so much fun, but it didn't serve me very well energetically. It's exhausting.
Yes,
And so just like anything
totally.
else, you can't run a marathon every single day. Sometimes you have to put your feet up. Chill out.
It's so good. And that's the thing, like, and I love what you're saying, like, and everyone, as you alluded to earlier, even everyone can find their own unique RX that helps raise their vibration. Some people will be gratitude. Some people, it might be going to the gym. I mean, I'm so open after I go to the gym. Like, I'll get so many downloads after a great workout. I'm very like physical, like,
I love going to the
for
gym.
everyone.
I love
It
movement
depends
work.
on your
Yes.
constitution. Like, some people will be music, some people will be sitting quietly, or nature. Whatever raises your vibration, can help you receive messages. And
all
like
of those
you're
things
saying,
I do. All of those
do
things
you?
I do.
What are
Yes,
other
yes.
things you like to do?
I love working out. I love taking a walk. I like being silly and just like dancing in my kitchen to music. I love a good downtime. I like a good introvert moment as well, where I'm just checked out. Maybe I'm binge watching something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just scrolling through TikTok. I enjoy that. I love good conscious breath. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. I like to, I'm a sigher. Like I, you know, always sighing. And I realize the reason why I do that is because I'm probably cleansing and grounding. It's just my subconscious taking care of it for me. And I love a good conversation, with my guides or other spiritual people here that I can throw out ideas to, and, that we could talk about really like the wooiest of woo stuff that helps get it all out. Surrendering to divine timing is a big one for me. Love surrendering over. That's been a big, huge lesson, especially in the last few years, of not trying to chase, to flow, and to create, co-create.
So can you give, because I think that's huge for a lot of people. So
Mm.
what have you learned in the way of concrete actionable steps to
For
do to and
to
allow
surrender to
yourself to
divine
do
timing.
that? Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not easy. Really, it's trial and error. It was trial and error for me. It was when every time I surrendered, the validation was just so profound and in my face that it became habitual. So now I edit a lot of my whatever's coming out of my mouth. I find that if the ego is in there, or if it's not flowing, that I need to edit that and speak about things in the now. I try not to get too ahead of myself. I always say out loud, and I trust divine timing. I think saying it out loud helps put the action in place. Always. I
That's
surrender
good.
over with the belief system. That's also the belief system that's behind it too, Kilkenny. It's like, so if I'm surrendering, then I am in the knowing that all is being taken care of, that I'm in full trust with the universe, and that if something doesn't work out, that I am also being protected. And so I moved out of a sense of fear of divine timing or anxiousness, and a real calm about it. I realized I was kind of working too hard at it. I didn't have to work
Well,
so
I
hard.
wanted to get to this. Again, I love and appreciate your authenticity, because you're this world famous psychic medium, and yet you're sharing so authentically, to use your word that's so important, your own process, because hearing about your processes will serve and help everyone listening. And to
Oh,
know that
thanks.
this very famous, very skilled psychic is still working through. And so thank you for sharing.
I hope
And
so.
I wanted to,
Can I just say this? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say this because I thank you for saying that, because I think people have a misconception of, people who've been in this space for a long time, or who are sharing it with as many people as they can, that they're just kind of floating through the universe like, I got this. I've got this. But I recently told a group I was teaching this past weekend, and I said to them, I might be your mentor today, but I'm also a student. We are all students. All of us are learning, every single one of us. So, you guys listening, all of you listening, whoever you're watching, whoever you're looking up to, just know they're a student as well. Everyone's learning.
love that so much. Yeah, I grew up in a yogic tantric lineage, and I grew up with all over the ashram I would go to, there were framed pictures. And there was some aphorism about, like, ultimately the guru is the student. The student is the guru. And that whole, like you're saying, it's so beautiful, that remembrance of, in the root of one is the other, like that yin and yang symbol. So it's really, really profound. And you're talking about your you're saying, I'm working with timing. And I think that's a really interesting facet to this whole new age spirituality world that's very focused. And I'm a fan of it totally. So I'm going to say, that disclaimer, that while I'm a fan of it, I also want to unpack it a little bit with you, which is manifesting. Because I think what you're
Yes.
talking about, divine timing, is part of that, right? That shadow, that we want to take
Totally.
responsibility. We want our good affirmations. We want to create our own reality. And for me, especially, I have a ton of air in my chart. I'm very, you might catch on, verbal and mental. And so words really help me. Affirmations and putting different MP3 in my mind on purpose, like yours was so beautiful. I believe in divine timing, and practicing saying that aloud is a great practical one, right? You can practice saying that 10 times a day, and pin it at the end of a sentence, and that will change how you feel. However, then what about also not getting so tightly obsessed with your manifestations too, that you actually block them And then you
Yes.
block the timing. So talk to me about how you feel about all that, because
I
it's really
love
good.
that. Oh my God, Kilkenny, where have you been? We connected before. I love you. Yes, 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 yes. Manifesting and divine timing can go hand in hand, but they can also be at odds. I agree. I agree. Because you have to remember something about manifesting. To me, it is not an instantaneous, although it can be, outcome. That what I've tried to do is change my outlook on manifesting to co creating. And because I look at it now as a co creation, I get to be far more creative in how I am viewing things. What do I really want to speak? It has given me a much deeper respect for my words, what I'm actually asking for or placing out to the universe, and even more importantly, why. Why am I doing it? Why am I asking for what I am asking for? What is the intention behind it? Yes, for the greater good of all concerned, always. I always know I'm in the right vibration because that's just my practice. But really, what is the intention? When I leaned into spaces of healing self, I found that my truest manifestations became the most authentic. There was no doubt in my mind. Everything shifted when I started to go more inward and really access the true higher knowing with that ego aside. Does that resonate? Does that make sense? It was like everything kind of changed for me. And I realized, oh, I'm so much more powerful than what I'm giving myself credit for. Oh, I'm so much more worthy. My lens changed. What did I think that I needed in comparison to what I truly needed or deserved, right? Everything shifted. It was so crazy powerful. And I think I've only done that in the last 3 years, to be honest. The last 4 years, I really got to a point where I understood the difference between wanting and needing, belonging or fitting in. There's just different types of things. That was my own personal stuff. Your listeners might have different journeys. But for me, it was really about what was I holding on to that no longer served me, and how was that interrupting my manifestations? How was that changing the scope of what I thought it should look like? When I started to use all of these tools together, divine timing in itself became even more of an illusion for me. I truly trust that everything will be taken care of in exactly the moment that it's supposed to. And that my job is to sit in the now, speak about it as if it's happening, speak our abundance into existence, speak all of our manifestations into existence, but trust that the scope of that manifestation, whatever it is that you're looking for, may change based on what spirit knows is best for you. And that to me, and we can say yes to that, to me, again, we go back to that beautiful surrender and trust that you can have with the universe. And it's the best part of creating, of
That was
co-creating.
a scintillating answer.
I'm so glad.
So,
I hope it made
so
sense, because it's really like sometimes I can just get so excited about it. I hope it came out clear.
yeah, no,
Because it's just
I want to like
so
recap
cool.
for the audience, and because it was really so packed with so many profound layers. So what I hear you saying, partly I think, is you're really thinking about the intention behind what you want,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still manifesting in the way of, excuse me, you're still setting intentions of things you want, but perhaps you're letting go of how they show up in space-time reality. So maybe
Absolutely.
it's like, I want, I don't know, instead of I want the Tesla, I want, more freedom, or like,
That's
I don't
right.
know, something. Is that right? Is that what I'm
Yes,
hearing? To
yes.
give them a
It's
concrete example.
the concrete example I could give you is, do you want a house or do you want a home?
Mm.
Are you
Mm.
manifesting the house on the hill with all the things, or are you manifesting the home? And if so, where does home reside? Does it start within self, or does it start with the lumber that's being bought to build your house? Literally, right? You really have to ask yourself these types of questions. What is it that is truly important in your life? What is the intention behind it? Is it an illusion that you're telling yourself based on what you've learned or have experienced or what you're afraid of? Is it scarcity? Things like scarcity, things like being alone, what does it really mean? Why do you want that companionship or the abundance that you're trying to attract into your life? Is it backed up by the fears, or is it backed up by the knowing that you signed up for some of these things and you are ready to have all of them come into fruition? There's a big difference in that. And to me, it takes you out of spaces of chasing and allows you to be in spaces of receiving.
Mm.
That you are receiving the energy, receiving the knowledge, awakening to the true awareness of what the soul is trying to communicate with you. And you're able to see it and hear it and feel it using all of your clairs, especially that claircognizance with your super inner knowing that you're on the right path. There's a calmness about it. It's not so frantic in your manifestation. There's just a cool calmness about it that I think is very different than when you're forcing things.
I
Or we're
love that
sitting
because
here
that
really
really
forcing
helps.
things.
That helps people to really give themselves a physical barometer. So you're saying, okay, listeners, if there's something you want to manifest, you can really ask yourself these type of questions like, why do I want this? What's the intention? Who does it serve? Is this something that I really want or I was conditioned to think I want, right? These are the types of things I hear you saying, which are really
Yes.
profound. And then
Yes.
just to give people actionable steps, then maybe feel in your body, like maybe take a moment. Because when you just said like, oh, like I know because I'm calm, that's a brilliant thing to share that people can say, okay, well, how do I do this? I'm not MaryAnn DiMarco. Okay, feel into your body once you say internally or externally that you want it. Where does it land? What's the quality in your body that you feel, right? That can be telling too.
Very
Do you
telling.
feel
Your intuitive
constricted?
self as well. Your intuitive self. Your claircognizance doesn't lie. That
Mm.
hindsight feeling, you've had that hindsight. Everybody's had hindsight before. If we can get ahead of that, you'll know what your intuitive self is saying to you. And even as you're manifesting, when you're making choices, there's a part of yourself in that inner knowing that you might hear say, are you sure this is what you want to be manifesting? Does this feel quite right? And your ego might get in there and say, no, 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 this is right because this is what everybody else is doing, or this is what success looks like, or, this is what I've always dreamed of. It's what I always thought it should be. But your inner knowing does not lie. So try to find that quiet voice as well within self and be in tune with that voice, that higher self voice that's saying, oh, maybe let's think about this just for a
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, that's really good. And listeners listening, how do I find the higher voice? Do the things that raise your vibration that we spoke of earlier,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
you're more fecund to receiving those really powerful messages. And
Yes.
you speak about this in your book, which I love and I really want to honor because I talk about this in my coaching work where I help people develop their intuition and psychic gifts. It's like the inner voice is your voice. It doesn't sound like the Wizard of Oz voice, or it's not some weird, right? Outside, like,
Hello.
Kilkenny,
Yes.
this, or your fairy godmother, like, right? Because I think that often, like, people, will come to me and they're like, we're talking. I'm like, well, what is your intuition saying? They're like, oh, well, no, that's my voice, right? And it's tricky because you have the voice of the ego, of course. Yourself has one voice in a sense. So can you speak a little bit about that, please? Like when people are
Yes.
saying, okay, well, how do I know which voice is my inner
Love
self,
that.
my highest self, spirit, so to speak?
It is not the man behind the curtain. You are exactly right. I mean, hello, pay attention to me.
I'd
That's
still be
not what it
waiting if it
is.
was that.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Our loud mind, our minds are loud, indecisive, fear-based, all those things. You could tell it's louder. Your inner voice, the inner knowing is, and if you have a good relationship with your guides as you should, and you get a good consistent spiritual practice, it's going to help you access that higher voice, the higher knowing. And that's the real voice that you want to be paying attention to. A couple of things that I do. One of them is, at this point, I know when I'm tired of my own story, I know it's me. It's my earthly, annoying self getting in the way. I start to annoy myself. I'm not even kidding. I'm like exhausted by me. And then I say, okay, I've about had it. And I'm a Pisces. So, I can go on and on. I
I
could
was going to
really get
ask
it.
you.
I'm Pisces.
Call me psychic, but
Yeah, you know.
I dubbed you for a Pisces.
Dreaming away. I'm like, I don't
talking to a Libra. You've got the two scales and the two
my
fish
husband's a
going
Libra. I love it. My husband the other day, just on a side note, he was getting a little moody, and I'm like, we can't. No, you're the Libra. I need you. You could bring the balance. I'm the moody one. We can't have both of us do that. Forget it. We'll be in big trouble. And to all my Pisces, I mean moody in a really beautiful way. No offense to my Pisces out there. So there's that.
But what makes you psychic too.
Yeah. The inner knowing for me comes from my solar plexus a lot of the time. That's where my claircognizance lies. It's just that inner intuitive, everybody says that gut feeling. For me, it really lies in the solar plexus, and that voice emanates from there in a different type of way. It can also be just in your inner ear, that you can hear them. For me, it's the right ear where I hear spirit speak to me all the time. If you're really having a hard time hearing it, what you could do is write it and allow the words to just flow on the page. Do some automatic writing. It's a great way for you to be in tune with what that voice sounds like. And if you ever read back an automatic writing, it definitely will not sound like you. My automatic writings do not sound, they are guide given. And I often have students read back to me their automatic writing, and they'll hear things like, "Oh, dear one, beloved, we want to tell you this and that." And I'm like, "Do you talk like that?" Like, no, I don't talk like that. So writing very much helps. You could pose a question at the top of the page as well. You're really curious. And maybe the question is, how do I hear my inner and higher voice? And they could tell you where you need to clear things in your life or what you can let go of. They're very directive, No problem telling you what to do if you're willing to listen.
It's so true. And I talk about this a lot in this podcast, but thinking about your own disposition, so I know like Elizabeth Gilbert talks about, her practice, which is now, apparently blown up. I haven't been on her Substack. I don't know if you have, but she now that's her main squeeze thing she's doing. I think she writes like, "Dear one, dear love, what should you have me know today?" Something like that. And then, it's the automatic writing practice. And she talks about her way to raise her vibration. I'm just realizing she doesn't, use these semantics, but this is what she's speaking to, is the architecture of her brain and soul and psyche. She reads poetry or even writes, poetry at the top, and then that gets her into spirit's voice. And then she finds spirit takes over. And
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I wrote a lot of poetry as a kid. I used to love to write poetry as a kid. And when I reflect on it now, it's definitely automatic writing, and had no idea. Musicians, and you can get these downloads. I often tell people too, don't be discouraged if you feel like it doesn't have that flowy feel, because some people are list makers. And so I tell people, my list makers out there, make the list, let them show you what to put on that list in response to whatever question. We're not trying to reinvent our personality wheel. We want to be authentic to self. And so if you're a list maker, write out an automatic writing list.
Well, that's it. And I love your book. And I do this with my clients a little differently, but it's the idea. One is that your style is, that do it yourself, which I think is so important, because like you said, you're not trying to reinvent your personality. Don't like go and then try to find your spiritual self. No, think about exactly who you are. If you're, like you said, practical, make lists. If you're a musician, use music, or use singing, or use, whatever, if you're an artist, maybe it's visual, whatever it is. If you have an Aries moon like me, you go to the gym, whatever it is.
That's right. That's right.
But like you talk about in your book, which I loved, because with my clients, even my readings, like I'll give people, I call them party favors or homework, depending upon their personality, and of things to do. And I know in your book, you and people who want to either become psychic mediums or just develop their gifts more, your book is not to be missed. It's my favorite book I've ever read on psychic mediumship. I think it's
Thank you so much. I appreciate
pithy,
that.
Palatable, accessible, and profound. And I think you give people like a schedule or something in the book,
I do.
Like where you write down practices, and that appeals to me so much. And because I was already like giving people homework and have that personality, I was like, ooh, somebody else is giving like actual concrete steps. So can you talk a little bit about that for people who are listening? Because I think that's a really practical thing that they can take away from this conversation. What should they be doing? Should they be getting Google Sheets and putting their or listen? How do you teach people?
If that speaks to you, yes. If a whiteboard speaks to you, go for it. If you want to make one on your computer, go right ahead. The reason why I channeled that was because I found a lot of people shaming themselves for not having a consistent practice. And I thought, well, I don't want people doing that ever. And so I
That's
got
ego.
to,
Excuse me for
yeah, that
interrupting, but that's
ego,
ego,
that is
right?
that
The
ego.
shaming.
Absolutely. We don't need it. We don't want it. So what I started to tell people was, let's make out a spiritual schedule. And I found that they were putting things like, well, I meditate on Tuesdays. I sit at my altar on Thursdays. I pull cards on Friday. And I wasn't hearing anything like I take care of my children. I have self-care day. I did a day, right? This was just my rest day. And I found that the schedule, when you write out everything you do in a week, work-wise, family-wise, all the things, and you add some of that spiritual stuff in there, you realize that your schedule is quite full, that you are actually doing a lot of things that are very spiritual that you're just not seeing as spiritual, like taking the walk and going to the gym, self-care things that make you feel great, or just dancing silly in the kitchen, whatever it is. That to me was people are just setting themselves up to fail. So I thought the schedule would be really great, because then you can see not only what you're doing, and it helps you be consistent, because consistency in this work, whether you're doing it for others or for self, is key. We can't train for a marathon if we're not consistent in running every day and taking care of ourselves. And it's the same especially when you're delivering messages for other people. We must know what we're doing and how to deliver and all the things. And so you should be doing your due diligence there. But we also want to be able to have it if it's our own practice. Yeah, it's part of our huge self-care, and spiritual hygiene is a big part of all this. And consistency is key, because consistency, it makes better. Practice makes better. So write out those calendars, everybody, and put it down. Write down what you're doing, but don't forget to include your personal life. And then be aware that your schedule may change based on your mood, based on your experiencing. Your practices may change. So just be aware that, what you could do one week, you might not be able to do another, and that's okay. That's totally okay.
Yes. Yes. And I think that consistency is more potent over the amount of time. Yeah. Like, don't you think that? Like, I always say once a month, meditation with spiritual.
Yeah.
Right. It's much more powerful 5 minutes every day than, once a month for 2 hours.
Yes,
right?
Kenny, I agree.
And
if it's 5 minutes for once a month that you got to meditate, at least you did it once a month, every month. But like I said, are you looking at all the other things of why it's only once a month? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And how are you viewing that? If you're home and you're running around and you're picking up kids and you're doing this, or if you're caring for an elderly parent, or if you're caring for your pets and you're doing all these things, and it doesn't, if your work schedule is just crazy, and it needs to be because you've been manifesting abundance in different ways, I don't know. All of that's very spiritual. So work on your perception as well. It'll help you in your consistency.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. It's so important, because that's the whole nomenclature rather of modern mystic podcast, right? How do we realize and how do we integrate our mysticism in our moment to moment life? To me, that's the whole point of life. I'm a tantrika yogi, and that's what it's about. It's like, okay, I could throw dinner at my people, or I could offer it with love as an act of religion, essentially.
Sure.
Right? Or present it. So it's like thinking about that. And I love so much about how you share how to really develop your intuition and tap into your team, because they're always there and they're always cheering you on, and they're literally this completely 24 hours a day, 7 days a week situation that most of us aren't trying to get information or access to. And like you're saying, if we just talk to them, if you're having, like, how many conversations do we have with ourselves all day long? If we could just take 0.05% of those and turn them towards our team, right? How different would our life be, right? And like you're saying, it's in all the moment-to-moment lives, in between and during all these different interactions. It doesn't have to wait to be later.
No, and it doesn't have to be so intentional. You don't have to say, okay, I am now going to sit down and access my guides. Let me light my candle. Let me burn my sage. Let me do all these things. Do it. I mean, I have done it, but you don't have to do it with such intention. And I think what people don't realize is that not only will this be intuitive and part of self, but it's instinctual after a while. So I speak to my guides, like I said, just like I'm speaking to you 90% of the time. I mean, I'm always in contact with them. We have an ongoing like group text. We are just constantly, in conversation with each other. No one's left the conversation to my knowledge. I'm really happy about that. And we just keep on going. And it's because it's so instinctual within me. It's just how I function.
Yeah. Well, I love how you talk about in your book fear, and I think really it can, I'd love for you to please share a little bit about how you spoke about fear and how you think about fear, because I think fear is really, one of those fundamental aspects of ego that keeps us blocked from this work. And I feel like how you shared in the book, you talk about the story with the rats, and you can share whatever you feel moved about it. But I really feel like that story is applicable to any negative, quote unquote, challenging, constrictive feeling. So can you talk about how you came up against your fear, how you've had a conversation with your fear, how you think about your fear now, and how maybe that could even be a template to work with any constrictive emotion that's blocking.
Sure. Fear can change from moment to moment, from situation to situation. We have all kinds of fears. We're not going to get out of our fears here. We're going to learn to work with them. And what I realized is that every time I focused on fear heavily, that fear just grew and grew and grew. I do not like, you're referring to the story about the rats. I don't like rats. I have no offense to rat lovers, but I am not one of them. And I've had some working in New York City. I've had some interesting experience with rats, so not a fan. And I had a vision. I believe it wasn't a dream, but it was a meditation that I had done where my guides walked me. I had a lot of fear at the time, and they were walking me down a corridor, and there was a door, and they opened the door, and there were two rats behind the door, and they said, they were kind of mad at each other, the rats, and they had me put food in my hand and extend it out. And they said, if you feed them, what do you think will happen? Well, not only are they going to grow, but I'm attracting them to me, right? They're coming at me now. And if we don't feed them, they'll just, eat it themselves or do whatever rats do. I don't know. But it's like, in other words, don't focus on these types of lower thoughts. Let's figure out why it's there. And fear is just, to me, the more you feed it, the more it grows. It does not serve you in any way, shape, or form except to learn from it. And it can absolutely create blocks. I will go into meditative states to realize deeper parts of fear. I want to see where the ego is absolutely playing. I want to see where my younger inner child is playing. I want to see where past life might come into that as well. That's always a fun one. Love exploring past
Really
life to
fun.
see what fears we're carrying over and why, and the different situations that we may be in. Very to the moment. They're very timely as why you're seeing a certain past life and what you're experiencing. So I got to work on them, and I found that, I'm not going to eradicate fear in my life, but I am certainly choosing to be productive with it. And it helps clear all those blocks. I feel very much in alignment too when I work on a good fear. All of a sudden I can feel my chakras just get really balanced out. And again, we go back to that peace and calm kind of feeling. And I'm not talking about, look, there are fear of losing people, and, we experience there are different types of fear, scary situation or something like that. But this is just kind of chronic fear that I'm really addressing, not so much in the moment.
Yeah. That reactive fear that
I mean, there's reactive fear. Obviously, there can be a very scary situation where you had fear. But for me, more chronic fear, repetitive thoughts, repetitive scenarios that you might be downloading or inputting into your brain. We must remember something. We are always going to have our physical, emotional, and mental bodies with us. They're not going anywhere, thank goodness. But our spiritual body is what we want leading the way when we're connecting. When we're sitting down and making connection with spirit, when I'm reading someone, my spiritual body has taken over, and my physical and mental and emotional bodies are there for frame of reference. And that's why I always say I'm not really, the reading is coming through me, not from me. When you're looking to channel for yourself and understand these harder parts of self, go into your spiritual self and help get to work with your physical, emotional, and mental bodies and see what's there, what you can unlock and what you can unload.
And so an actionable step to do that would be for people listening, ask your team.
Yeah.
Say, hey,
Yeah.
can you help me with this fear? Like you said, like you're in a coffee shop. To your team.
To them
you're
for
just, and you don't have
much,
to.
Yeah, go ahead, Kilkenny.
No, like so you're as simply as you're saying, right? Just like, hi, can you help me figure out this fear? Show me, right?
Yeah. I
like,
get to work with them on everything. You've asked me to do this work and I'm a human being here, right? There's that. So within my work, if I'm feeling fear or stress surrounding my work, I tell my team, hey, what's going on here? Let's figure this out. If it's within my own personal life, it's the same thing. I say to them, we're a team here. What is it that you want me to know? Why is this presenting so strongly? Obviously, you want me to see something. I trust them so much that even what I feel is not serving me, if it's presenting in front of me, I want to understand it on a deeper level and I need to know why it's there. And I'm a bit of I like to figure out puzzles. You know, I do like to get to the bottom of things, and that is helpful. But I realize that if I keep trying to spiritualize my way out of it, it's still there. So why not do the work on it? And your team is there for you. Your team is absolutely there for you. Use them.
Yeah. So it's people listening. It's like literally just asking your team, hey, show me. And maybe you'll have a dream. Maybe you'll meet someone, and when you're walking down the street, that conversation will all of a sudden elucidate something in your mind, right? Maybe you'll automatically write. So there's so many ways that you can get the messages. Maybe you see a sign on a license plate or a bumper sticker, right? There's so many ways that the universe can speak to us, and signs and symbols.
Ask for the signs.
We have to ask.
Ask for the signs. And when you see them, don't ask again.
No, I like that.
Don't keep really asking, because then you're not trusting them. So if you saw it, and then people will say, well, what if I don't see the sign? Well, maybe you're asking the wrong question, right? Go back. Am I asking the wrong question? If you're having a hard time hearing them, feel the answer. What do you think the answer may be? It's the same thing, right? Use your imagination. Our mind is a beautiful tool that they use to help us translate messages. So go there, create spaces in your mind and through meditation where you can, I do meeting hours in heaven, or you can do a temple meditation and sit with your loved ones, your guides, sit with them, have a conversation. For my corporate people out there, I do a boardroom. Create a boardroom, have your guides sitting there and say, hey, I have contracts I need to work out. I'm not understanding some of this stuff. I recently said to my guides not that long ago, I am so tired of this contract. Whatever this is, we need to figure this out. Like, I'm done. I want to edit this out. Yeah, I was done. I'm like, I get it. I don't, what else am I missing?
So funny.
So again, like I said, I'm real casual with them and to the point. Like, what do you want me to know? Let's not complicate it.
It's really not. And that's it. It's just a matter of participating, asking, listening, paying attention. Yeah. And like you said, it all comes back to understanding self and understanding how to evolve and move on. And don't you feel like, or I should say, do you feel like really with your clients that often there really is like a couple themes that the people that you're serving, your sitters, are here to learn? Meaning like a lot of things that come up for individual clients I'll work with really have the same common denominational theme, whether it's trust, whether it's self-worth, whether it's forgiveness. So I think that that's the case for a lot of people, that you can really boil and distill down a lot of your life's work and a lot of what plagues you and a lot of why you suffer into a couple categories, and then really simply hit that category with your team, right? Like you can be efficient with it.
And isn't that comforting? I mean, that we all have very similar common threads that run within each of us. And that in itself leads to things like empathy and love and not feeling alone and feeling understood. We can sometimes feel like we're on this singular island and that we're all by ourselves. But in actuality, there are people who are experiencing things just like you are, and they don't know what to do about it either. And your guides have an understanding. And I really think it's designed that way. It's designed in a way that we're supposed to have some of these common threads. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes there's things that I can never relate to or understand, but I can certainly give love and empathy to it because I know what it feels like to feel a certain way in other areas of my life. And so there's that common thread again. We can answer all of it with love through our guides, every single part of it. And yeah, the underlying theme as human beings seems to be pretty clear. There is a solid foundation that I can say without, plucking too many unique situations out of it. We all kind of want and need and desire the same things in life. And we're all trying to figure it out in various ways. No matter how we were raised or whatever, we're all trying to get to some sort of end game.
Now, do you ever doubt? Like, does your ego still come up even now as a nationally acclaimed author and a world renowned psychic? Do you have moments where you're like, what? Like, or
Of
just
course.
moments where you're like, no, I don't believe any of this. It's all bullshit.
I
So,
mean,
do you?
Yeah.
And how do they show up for you? And then what do you do?
I don't doubt that I haven't doubted making connection to my guides in years. And that I
But
can.
you did early on.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Early on. I mean, early on I was like, do I even know what I'm doing? Am I making this up? I mean, but when you look at somebody and you're like, I don't know, there's a marshmallow floating over your head and they're like, oh, we used to call my grandmother marshmallow grandmother. I'm like, okay. I mean, I think they come back and they give you all of that beautiful validation. I'm so grateful for those readings, those early readings, especially because there's so much learning and validation that needed to take place. I think now anywhere that doubt creeps up, probably, and I hope this resonates with your listeners, I think sometimes worthiness, maybe sometimes, as every time I feel like every time they kick me up a notch work wise, I have to go, really? Are you sure? I don't know. And I had to learn to really work with, taking your seat at the table, so to speak, and having that be okay. And I think that that's just, again, I got curious with that like anything else. But do I doubt? Sure. I mean, everybody doubts every so often, but I never doubt connection to spirit. I never doubt the other side, higher source, what I'm shown, as crazy as some of the stuff is that comes through to me, that I'm like, really? All right. Well, that was very interesting. I mean, some of my writings are really out there. I just shrug my shoulders and go, all right. You know what I don't do?
Oh,
I don't allow myself to go, and this was guide driven. Maybe you can relate to this with me. For as much as they show me about the universe and all the things and total rabbit holes that we can go down, and they're really fun to go down, I always hear the same thing. It's a distraction. And that get a general knowledge, allow yourself to have a little fun with all of these theories, but let's get to work. And so they always like to bring me, they always like to bring me back to center. And I find that really cool.
That is so, so good. Because I think it can be completely a shadow of this work and of this, even if it's like a hobby for you and a fun thing you do, that you have to not let it become then a seventh chakra imbalance.
That's right.
which is an excess for those people who know about chakras of spiritual, over the top hopping and not being grounded enough. And I'm curious, just to start to punctuate the conversation. And on that note, and this might be a whole nother podcast episode, but what do you feel about then the very interesting trending, at least in my circles, I don't know of your circles, but I have a feeling they overlap, of ayahuasca and all the plant medicine exploration that, was very big in the 60s. And then, when I grew up, I was in the 90s hardcore spiritual movements where you did nothing, and it was a very austere path, and it was nothing. It was my whole inner voice and upbringing is very I want to do it myself. Screw anything else. I want to do heavy lift and I want to meditate, and that was that culture, and I very much imbibe that. But I'm curious what you think, because it's so big now, and I feel like it's bursted and in the mental health fields and all this. So what do you think of all that? What you were speaking to?
Okay, I just love you. I love your energy. You're so great. What do I think of it? I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. So for me, I'm like, you do you. If that brings you some sort of higher awareness and you felt people have asked me to do ayahuasca, I just want you to know. And it's not for
Oh, I'm
me.
sure.
Yeah. They're always like, do you want to do it? I'm like, what more do you want me to see? I don't really want to do that. I think I've seen enough. Thank you
It's
very much. But I have very
it's
close
so
people,
funny.
yeah, that have had incredibly profound healing experiences. I've had people who've had dismantling experiences, really accelerated a spiritual awakening in a erratic kind of way, in a shocking kind of way, even more shocking than it already is when you have one. So I think it's really personal. I think it's a personal choice. I think just like any modality, you have to be called to do it. And I don't feel personally called to do it, but I have had friends, very close friends, that have been called to do it, and it has served them very well. It has to feel authentic. Do not do it just because it's a trend. Do it because Spirit said you might find peace here. Your answers,
Yeah.
you might find some answers that you're seeking there. I love to get a little historical with it. I was reading a book about how these types of things were really used in early history, especially with seers. It was like the form of like the first communion or something like that. I'm reading, it's over there. It's called the mortality key, I think. No, the immortality key. I think that's the book, and I'll get it. I'll make sure it's the right one if you edit. But I found like, oh, there is a story to be told about it, but I'm like you. I like to get my own information. I really enjoy having Spirit tell me, and then hearing validation from others with similar downloads or similar experiences. I think that's really cool. And I also think it helps sharpen your skills and your abilities. But if you feel called, then you feel called.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Thank
I'm
you.
like
Thank you
you.
for
I'm like
again
you. I kind of
authentic
like,
conversation.
oh, my pleasure. This has been a joy talking to you.
I'm wondering, would you mind punctuating the conversation with like whether it's a benediction or a
Yeah. You
one
want
minute
like
meditation or
little
centering,
universal
anything that you
download?
feel moved. That would be amazing. Universal download.
I can do a universal download. Let me just kind of get a little bit more open. I like universal downloads because these are, they're messages for the collective, and they're different every time. And I know the theme has been a lot of love lately. And so I can already hear the words of love, coming through. But surround ourselves with nature and beauty and all things that serve our soul. Allow yourselves the freedom to experience the light in its truest of forms, emanating through the body and sharing that beautiful, loving light with others. Be aware that in your soul lies the most beautiful inner peace, and you have access to that inner peace anytime that you want. You are not alone. We, the collective, are around you, surrounding you, loving you, encouraging you to go forth into the world and express yourself and your service in its most authentic forms. Teach, teach, teach after you learn, 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 and give love and peace to all who know it. We are a human race. You are a human race. We are as one collective together, full of love, full of joy. Choose that.
Mm.
Done.
Mm. Amazing. And I just want to sit in quiet for 20 minutes, but we can't. But that was so beautiful. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. Was such word medicine. Oh my goodness.
They're pretty to the
I'm
point.
sure our listeners
My
are
guides get right
feeling
to it. Yeah.
like I love it. Yes, those
Thanks.
very but you're very pithy, but you're also very eloquent. You're kind of like, I don't know, David Mamet or something.
Thank you. I
The
appreciate it.
guides, the
I
energy.
appreciate it.
Brilliant play. I love it.
Thanks.
Where can folks find out about you and all your amazing work in this world?
They can go to MaryAnnDiMarco.com, and they could follow me on Instagram and Facebook at MaryAnn the Medium, and sign up for my newsletter at MaryAnnDiMarco.com. We're always putting out information of where I'm at and what I'm doing, and I hope I get to meet some of you. And there's applications online for my mentor program, my one-on-one mentor program.
And what is that like? Do you want to tell folks about it?
Yeah,
Or?
it's basically you sign up for about 5 sessions with me, and I am channeling the entire time, and we're getting all things spiritual for you, and how really it's based on what you're looking to do, what you feel guided to do, and Spirit comes in and helps me teach you and show you what you need to do to get where you want to go.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I love it.
Well, folks,
I love it. I love it.
check her out. All the things in your book, Medium Mentor. If you haven't read that yet, I highly, highly recommend it. It's awesome. Folks listening as well can get my free intuition building kit that I made more recently that folks are loving. So you can go to modernmystic.love/intuition and grab that. And MaryAnn, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for really your wisdom in the form of your book that really has impacted my work. That yeah, I love your pithiness, your humor, your depth, and your intelligence. You are a force, and thank you for your light in this world.
Thank you so much. Your energy is just absolute pure joy. It has been an honor to sit with you. I loved this conversation, and you ring me up anytime. We'll continue more. I love it.
I love it. Well, here's to more magic, meaning, and mindfulness, everyone. Namaste.